The ache begins quietly, almost imperceptibly, like a shadow stretching across the edges of your consciousness. It gnaws not at the moments you share, but at the silence between them, the cold spaces where attention should have been. He doesn't text back, or when he does, it is clipped, distracted, rehearsed. Yet you feel compelled to wait, to hover in that fragile limbo, hoping for the warmth that never truly arrives. This is not love, not the radiant, unshakable flame that transforms, that makes you feel seen. It is a wound, an attachment wound, ancient, tender, and relentlessly alive, and it pulses beneath your skin, threading through your thoughts with invisible threads of longing. And the more you chase it, the more it slips, like water through desperate fingers. You replay moments over and over, the brief laugh, the lingering glance, the words left unsaid. You clutch these fragments as if they are lifelines, but they are merely shadows cast by the unhealed parts of yourself. They whisper of a hunger that has nothing to do with him and everything to do with the void you've carried for years. The part of you that learned early on that love is conditional, that attention can be stolen or withheld, that your worth is measured by another's desire. This is the root. This is the pain disguised as passion. And in the stillness of your apartment, under the chiaroscuro glow of a streetlight filtering through blinds, you feel it as a tremor, a hollow, unnameable ache. Each unanswered text, each delayed call, each half-hearted compliment becomes a wound reopening. Your body remembers what your mind has tried to bury. The weight of the gaze that never landed fully, the touch that withdrew just before it could heal. You crave him not for who he is, but for the way you hope he will fill what has always been empty. And the irony is cruel. In seeking fulfillment from him, you surrender to the very shadow that has long whispered, "You are not enough." But there is a promise beneath this pain if you dare to see it. The wound that makes you ache also points the way. It is a map, not a trap. It traces the contours of your own unmet needs, your own denied sovereignty. Every lingering fear, every twinge of jealousy, every moment you feel drawn into desperate pursuit is an invitation to discover a power buried deep beneath your longing. It is the same power that Lilith wielded, unbound and unrepentant. It is the force of the Shadow Queen, who knows she can survive even when love withdraws its warmth. And once you begin to trace this map inward, to name the wound instead of worshiping the emptiness, you step onto a path where your allure becomes your own, magnetic and untouchable. And yet the path is not gentle. Each revelation burns. You notice patterns you once ignored. The men who vanish when things grow intimate, the words that ring hollow, the quiet betrayal in what is left unsaid. The ache is relentless because it carries memory, not only of this present absence, but of the old absences. The mother who didn't notice, the father who withdrew, the friends who let you vanish in silence. Every crack in your heart is mirrored in the world you inhabit now. And every time you cling to the hope that someone else will fill it, the wound pulses more fiercely, a drumbeat reminding you that you are still, always, unwhole. And still you cannot look away, because within that ache lies the first spark of a secret truth. It is not about him, it is about you. The siren within knows this, whispering beneath the surface, an ethereal hum beneath your restless longing. Your obsession, your desire, your addictive pull toward him is a mirror of the parts of yourself left unclaimed. You have mistaken shadow for love, attachment for passion, and now the two are intertwined, a thicket of yearning and frustration that has shaped your every relationship. And the more you stare, the more the ache transforms, slowly, almost imperceptibly, into awareness, and awareness into the stirring of power. And yet the air is heavy, scented with longing and half-light, and even as this first understanding settles, a new tension coils beneath your ribs. Something waits, something unspoken, just at the edge of the mirror where reflection fractures. You feel it, the silent knowledge that the journey inward is far more dangerous, far more intoxicating than any pursuit outside yourself. The shadows shift, and the first taste of freedom tastes faintly of fire, and you wonder if you are ready for what comes when the ache no longer points outward, but straight into the marrow of your own soul. The ache thickens, no longer subtle but a pulse you cannot ignore. It follows you through crowded rooms and empty streets alike, a phantom weight against your ribs. Each glance at his name on your phone makes your fingers hesitate, suspended between hope and dread. You know deep down that the response, or lack of it, will not heal you. Yet still, you wait, trembling on the edge of surrender, as if the mere act of enduring the silence will finally prove your worth. This is the trap. The attachment wound whispers, feeding on your patience and your longing, convincing you that devotion is measured by suffering. And as you linger in this waiting, you begin to notice the patterns repeating across every relationship you've known. The subtle withdrawals, the cold silences, the brief flashes of intensity followed by absence. You remember the times you sacrificed clarity for comfort, affection for approval. Each memory resonates like a cracked bell, its echo carrying the bitter taste of abandonment and betrayal. Your body remembers the hollow ache of those early wounds, the invisible tally of love that was always conditional. And the more you recall, the more the present moment resonates with the old echoes, entwining them until they become indistinguishable. But within this repetition, a quiet, almost imperceptible awareness begins to stir. You notice how your own desire has become a weapon, sharpened by need, yet wielded blindly. You see the way your gaze lingers, your voice softens, your body leans instinctively toward the source of your longing. You recognize the addictive dance: pull, withdraw, chase, retreat. It is seductive, intoxicating, yet poisonous. And the insight, though small, carries weight. You understand that your suffering is not punishment, but information. It is a signal pointing toward the parts of yourself abandoned, overlooked, and denied. And as the room darkens, shadows pooling in corners like silent witnesses, you feel another layer awaken, the siren within, a current of magnetism that has always existed beneath the ache. It is not yet unleashed, not yet fully embodied, but it stirs with the recognition that you need no external validation to command presence. Each sigh, each glance, each subtle gesture becomes a brushstroke in the art of reclaiming your own power. And for the first time, the ache does not only signal loss, it begins to illuminate possibility. You see that your longing, once a tether to others, can be transformed into an instrument of self-mastery. And yet the path is treacherous. The more you embrace this awakening, the more the shadow resists. Old fears, once buried beneath layers of denial, surface with uncanny precision. You remember the voices that dismissed your pain, the moments you were made to feel invisible. Your own shadow rises, questioning, mocking, daring you to confront the truth that love has always been a mirror of your own acceptance. You feel its feral edge, and in this moment, you understand that transformation will require more than awareness. It will demand confrontation, a deliberate stepping into discomfort where the old ache lives, waiting to test your resolve. And still, in the quiet of the evening, when the streets outside are hushed and the click of heels echoes in the empty corridor, you sense a subtle shift. The ache has not disappeared, but it hums differently now, a low, resonant vibration that hints at hidden depths within yourself. You feel the weight of desire, not as a chain, but as a key. Each pang of longing becomes a reminder of your capacity to inhabit your own power, to draw from the wound instead of feeding it. The siren leans closer in the shadows, whispering of a magnetic allure born not from his attention, but from your own sovereignty. And yet, even as this understanding deepens, a tension lingers. A fracture in the air, almost imperceptible like the faint shimmer before a storm. You feel it in the way the light bends across the walls, the way silence stretches between your breaths. It is a sign, unspoken and enigmatic, that the journey into your own depths is only beginning. The wound has opened a doorway, and beyond it waits a darkness that promises both fear and fascination, a realm where desire and power intertwine, where mastery of the self can be claimed, but only by those willing to face what lies hidden. The darkness is not empty. It is dense with memory, with echoes of every unfulfilled need you have ever carried. You feel it coil around you, not as threat, but as invitation, a challenge issued by the parts of yourself you have long ignored. The Shadow Queen stirs within, her presence unmistakable, quiet, unrelenting, sovereign. She observes your ache without judgment, recognizing it as both warning and catalyst. Each pang of longing, each tremor of uncertainty, is transformed into data, a map to navigate the labyrinth of your inner world. You begin to sense that this pain, unbearable as it seems, is also the threshold to power you have not yet claimed. And as you trace the contours of the wound, you see how your desire has been misdirected. It has not been about him, the fleeting figure on the other side of your longing. It has been about your own unmet needs, your own silenced voice, the part of you conditioned to seek external approval. You feel the weight of this realization, Lee. A chill running down your spine, cold and undeniable. Yet even in its sharpness there is liberation. The ache no longer chains you, it guides you. It illuminates the hidden architecture of your psyche, revealing the rooms where fear, abandonment, and yearning once dwelled unchecked. And in these rooms, you meet the fragments of yourself that were left behind. The little girl who learned to wait for attention, the adolescent who masked her brilliance to avoid rejection, the woman who surrendered her desire for fleeting comfort. Each presence is vivid, tangible, her breath, her trembling, her whispered pleas echoing through time. And you listen, not with pity but with authority. You acknowledge their existence and offer them space within you. You recognize that their fear has shaped your patterns, but that recognition does not require surrender. It demands sovereignty. The siren, the shadow queen, the high priestess, all these archetypal facets begin to converge, guiding you through the terrain of longing. The ache becomes a lens through which you examine your own magnetic power. You notice how your gaze lingers with intention, how a controlled breath can command presence, how the echo of a whispered name can ripple through the room. Desire, once a chain linking you to another's whims, is now a river you can navigate with precision. You feel its pull, not as victim, but as orchestrator. The wound has taught you its rhythms, its cadence, its language, and in that mastery lies the first taste of freedom. And yet the process is not linear. The old patterns resist. Moments of longing surge unexpectedly, igniting the same ache you thought you had begun to master. You feel drawn toward old habits, replaying texts, imagining scenarios, measuring affection with anxiety. But now, awareness intervenes. You notice the pulse of need, the shadow of expectation, and you redirect it inward. You do not suppress the ache. You observe it, dissect it, integrate it. Each surge is an opportunity to reclaim authority, to transmute old vulnerability into deliberate power. The pain, once a leash, becomes a tool, a chisel sculpting the contours of your inner sovereignty. And as night deepens, the room awash in chiaroscuro shadows, you sense the stirrings of transformation. The ache that once defined you now hums beneath the surface, a latent current of potential. It is a reminder that power is never given, never borrowed. It is claimed. You begin to understand that the path of the Shadow Queen is not cruelty or detachment, but mastery of the self. Each longing glance, each ache-filled breath, is a lesson in sovereignty. And the more you inhabit this presence, the more the wound shifts from curse to compass, pointing you toward an allure that is entirely your own. And yet, even as the first tendrils of mastery take root, A whisper of anticipation coils at the edge of perception. The transformation is underway, but the full realization waits beyond a threshold that promises both ecstasy and fear. You feel it in the air, a shift in gravity, a subtle tension in the pulse of the room, the echo of something unspoken that has always been there. The ache, now both guide and herald, hints at a power so magnetic, so untouchable, that stepping fully into it will redefine not only your desire but the very architecture of your inner world. And then comes the confrontation with the self you have long avoided. The ache, persistent and intimate, draws you deeper into a chamber of reflection where nothing is hidden. Here, the fragments of longing and loss are laid bare. The memory of absent touches, the sting of dismissals, the hollow echo of affection withdrawn. You do not flinch. You do not turn away. The Shadow Queen watches, unblinking, as you face the ache in full. And in this confrontation, the first real alchemy occurs. The raw pain of attachment begins to transmute into clarity. The wound is no longer merely a source of suffering. It becomes a lens through which your inner mechanics are revealed, exposing every habitual surrender, every misplaced desire, every silent concession of power. And within this clarity, a subtle thrill arises. The siren awakens, ethereal yet unyielding, her presence weaving through your awareness like smoke in dim light. She reminds you that desire is not a weakness to be feared, but a current to be navigated. You feel it pulse in your body, the echo of longing, now recognized as a signal rather than a trap. You notice the weight of a gaze you once sought from him, and you turn it inward, observing your own gravity, your own pull. Each sigh, each shiver, each tremor of anticipation is reclaimed, not in servitude to absence, but as a deliberate act of self-possession. And yet the ache does not vanish. It lingers, but differently, less as a tether, more as a rhythm. Each pang is now a reminder of the shadow that has always accompanied you, a signal that the work is ongoing. You notice the way your thoughts see spiraled, how your fantasies once fettered you, how your body once reacted before your mind could intervene. And you let it feel, not with desperation, but with curiosity. Every pulse of desire, every echo of loss becomes a tool, a calibration device, guiding you toward mastery. You are learning the language of your own longing, and with fluency comes subtle dominion. And as the night stretches, filled with chiaroscuro contrasts of light and shadow, the inner alchemy deepens. The ache begins to sing a different song, a resonance of power and magnetism that has always lain dormant beneath the surface. The high priestess whispers from the edges of consciousness, reminding you of hidden knowledge, the strength of boundaries, the sanctity of your own inner temple, the quiet authority that does not demand attention but commands it effortlessly. You feel it in the controlled breath, in the deliberate pause before movement, in the way the body occupies space without apology. The ache, once a signal of loss, is now a beacon of potential, a harbinger of sovereignty yet fully realized. And yet the path twists, revealing a tension that is almost unbearable. You feel the ghost of old attachment patterns pressing against the edge of this newfound clarity. The pull of familiar suffering, the siren call of dependence, rises with seductive insistence. But now you are equipped, observing without judgment, naming without shame, integrating without collapse. The wound pulses, but you pulse with it, a co-author of your own presence. Desire is no longer the master. It is the instrument through which your inner architecture is revealed and refined. The ache teaches, the shadow instructs, and the archetypes converge to guide every deliberate step toward sovereignty. And in this space, a subtle tension lingers, palpable in the quiet, in the shifting light, in the pause between breaths. The transformation is underway, profound yet incomplete. You sense the next phase, the threshold that awaits beyond awareness, the integration of your shadow with your allure, your ache with your mastery. The room, heavy with possibility, hums with the quiet thrill of power being claimed. And as your gaze sweeps across the fractured reflections in the mirror, you glimpse the first hint of the woman who will emerge. Untouchable, magnetic, sovereign, and finally, fully present within her own ache. And then comes the reckoning with desire itself. No longer a passive tremor in the chest or a longing projected onto another. It rises now as a conscious force within you, feral, deliberate, untamed. The Shadow Queen leans closer, her presence anchoring the recognition that the ache is not a deficit to be filled, but a current to be harnessed. Each pulse of longing is catalogued, observed, and woven into your own rhythm. You notice the subtle ways your body reacts to absence and attention, how a delayed response once ignited panic now provokes reflection, and how the echo of withheld affection becomes a reminder of sovereignty rather than submission. And in this alchemy, the siren's voice grows stronger, lilting beneath your awareness like smoke curling in a darkened room. She reminds you that allure is not seduction alone. It is presence, mystery, and the silent knowledge that your value cannot be given or taken. You feel it in the curve of your neck, in the stillness of a prolonged gaze, in the deliberate cadence of your breath. The ache pulses as a teacher, a signal that your magnetic field is awakening, not for him, not for anyone outside, but entirely for you. Each longing glance you once surrendered is now a gesture of awareness, a calibration of the power you have begun to reclaim. And yet, even as mastery begins to settle like velvet around your consciousness, tension remains. The past, encoded in every pattern of attachment, stirs with insistence. Old memories rise, the absent hands of caregivers, the hushed voices that dismissed your need, the echo of those who vanished when closeness demanded presence. Each memory is a shadow you cannot erase, but now you meet it without fear. You allow it to breathe, to exist, to be integrated. The ache, once a torment, becomes a bridge to the parts of yourself long denied. The young girl, the abandoned lover, the woman who deferred her power. And you offer them recognition, not as pity, but as authority. The High Priestess emerges more fully here, her quiet dominion enveloping your awareness. You feel the strength of intuition, the clarity of boundaries, the sacredness of your own inner temple. The ache is no longer a signal of deficiency, but a reminder of depth, an invitation to occupy your own gravity fully. Each pulse of longing, each flicker of obsession, is now transformed into a tool for self-mastery. You are learning to move through desire as one who is untouchable, deliberate, sovereign. The wound, once a lever of vulnerability, has become a compass pointing to magnetic presence. And as shadows deepen, in around the room, the ache carries a new resonance, electric, commanding, intimate. You feel the subtle tremor of power rising within, an allure born not from his gaze, but from your own embodiment of it. Each sigh, each shiver, each trace of lingering desire becomes a deliberate brushstroke in the portrait of your own sovereignty. The wound teaches, the shadow instructs, the archetypes converge, and your inner world begins to radiate a force that is both feral and controlled, magnetic and untouchable. And yet, in this quiet triumph, there is an edge of tension that refuses to dissipate. The ache hints at the next stage, the threshold beyond mastery, where the integration of shadow and desire reaches its full expression. You feel it in the air, a subtle pull, a tremor in the light, the soft vibration of possibility that hums just beyond comprehension. The transformation is profound, but the final iteration, the full embodiment of allure, power, and self-possession, has yet to be claimed. You sense the presence of the woman who waits beyond the ache, whole, sovereign, luminous, and untouchable, poised to step fully into her magnetic truth. And now the ache begins to shift from pulse to presence, a constant undercurrent that hums with quiet authority. It is no longer a torment, no longer a tether pulling you toward someone else's indifference. Each pang of longing is felt fully, acknowledged, and then transformed into motion, deliberate and controlled. The Shadow Queen watches with approval as you move through the world differently, each step deliberate, each breath measured, each glance laden not with need but with sovereign intent. You notice how the energy once spent in chasing is now reclaimed, flowing through your body with a feral precision that demands attention, without demanding anything in return. And within this reclaimed space, the siren unfolds more vividly. She teaches that magnetic allure is not performance, not the seduction of another's desire, but the mastery of your own presence. The ache that once whispered of absence now resonates as a subtle rhythm, a pulse of your own power. You feel it in the lift of your spine, the subtle weight of a gaze, the slow arc of motion that traces intention into every space you occupy. Desire is no longer a chain. It is a river you navigate with sovereignty, a current that flows from you rather than toward you. You begin to understand that the intensity you once craved from another is already contained within your own being, ready to be claimed. And yet, even as this embodiment deepens, the shadow of old attachment stirs. Ghosts of the past rise in fleeting flashes, the dismissive tone of a lover, the absent embrace of a parent, the quiet betrayal of those who disappeared when intimacy demanded courage. Each memory carries a tension that is both familiar and instructive, but you no longer recoil. You meet the echoes of old longing with recognition and authority. You integrate the ache as a tool, not a trap, allowing every pulse of desire to teach, to refine, and to amplify your sovereignty. You feel the weight of your own magnetism solidifying, an unseen force radiating from the center of your being. The High Priestess emerges fully now, a quiet but unshakable presence. Her wisdom anchors the transformation, reminding you that intuition, discernment, and sacred boundaries are the core of irresistible power. The ache no longer signals lack, it signals depth. Each flicker of obsession, each tremor of longing becomes a conduit for self-knowledge and self-possession. You are learning the subtle art of inhabiting your own gravity, the rhythm of desire measured and mastered, the language of attraction encoded within your own presence. The wound that once dictated your patterns now guides your sovereignty, whispering secrets of allure, power, and freedom. And as night deepens, chiaroscuro shadows tracing the contours of the room, you sense the final phase approaching: integration. The ache has revealed, instructed, and transformed you, preparing you for a presence that is magnetic, unshakable, and entirely self-contained. You feel the Shadow Queen, the Siren, and the High Priestess converging, each archetype a pillar supporting the architecture of your inner sovereignty. The ache is no longer pain. It is a rhythm, a pulse of energy that carries both remembrance and liberation. The room, heavy with stillness, vibrates with the promise of a woman who will no longer chase, wait, or plead, but move through the world fully embodied in her own power. And yet, even in this quiet mastery, a tension lingers, electric, anticipatory, impossible to ignore. The final integration of shadow, desire, and sovereign presence waits just beyond the threshold of comprehension. You feel it in the subtle shift of air, in the shimmer of light across fractured surfaces, in the almost imperceptible resonance of your own breath. The ache has guided you to this precipice, where mastery is not a concept but a living, breathing force. And as your reflection catches in a fractured mirror, you glimpse her there, untouchable, luminous, magnetic, and finally, entirely whole, poised to step beyond the wound into the uncharted territory of your own irresistible power. And now comes the quiet dawn of integration, where shadow and longing coalesce into something neither fleeting nor fragile. The ache persists, but it has been tempered, its sharp edges smoothed into rhythm. It hums beneath the surface like the steady pulse of a drum, a signal of vitality rather than absence. You feel it in the tension of your shoulders, the curve of your spine, the subtle cadence of your breath. Each movement is deliberate, every glance intentional. The Shadow Queen observes, approving, as you inhabit a presence that no longer bends or wavers. Desire, once a lever pulling you outward, now flows from within, a current of sovereignty that radiates without need. And the siren rises fully now, weaving her ethereal thread through your awareness. Magnetic, unyielding, irrepressible, she reminds you that allure is not dependent on attention, and that power is born from embodiment. Each sigh, each controlled pause, each subtle sway of motion communicates something primal, that you are complete, unshakable, and entirely present in your own gravity. The ache is no longer a call for another. It is a resonance of your own force, a pulse of the energy that has always lain dormant within your chest, waiting to be claimed. And in this claiming, you feel a thrill that is both intimate and untouchable, like fire contained yet capable of consuming. Yet the integration is exacting, and the shadow lingers, teasing with memory and residual longing. Fragments of old attachments appear in fleeting flashes, an absent voice, a dismissive glance, a hollow embrace from the past. They rise not to wound but to teach, reminding you of the patterns you once surrendered to unconsciously. And now you observe without fear, without collapse. Each pang, each echo is recognized as a signal, a guidepost on the path to mastery. You move through them deliberately, allowing them to inform, not dictate, your presence. The ache is transformed into a tool, a rhythm that aligns your body, mind, and essence with the sovereignty that has been your birthright all along. The High Priestess emerges as the final arbiter, her quiet authority anchoring the alchemy. She guides the integration of longing, shadow, and desire into a singular, coherent force. Intuition sharpens, boundaries assert themselves effortlessly, inner knowledge radiates outward without effort. You feel it in the weight of your gaze, in the subtle tension of your shoulders, in the poised breath before movement. The ache, once a torment, has become the drumbeat of your sovereignty, the pulse that draws power to itself, teaching you to inhabit your magnetism fully and deliberately. It is a hum beneath every gesture, a resonance in every glance, a force shaping the way the world responds to your presence. And as the night gives way to the first whisper of morning light, the ache reaches its ultimate transformation. It is no longer absence, no longer dependency, no longer a wound seeking repair. It is a current of strength, a song of sovereignty, a rhythm that carries the combined authority of the Shadow Queen, the allure of the siren, and the wisdom of the High Priestess. The room is silent, but it vibrates with the energy of your full embodiment, each breath, each heartbeat, each movement resonating with untouchable presence. The ache has completed its journey, from tether to compass, from torment to magnetism, from wound to power. And in this stillness, you glimpse the final truth, that desire, longing, and the ache itself are not enemies to be feared, but allies in the cultivation of your inner dominion. You are no longer defined by what is missing, by what was denied, or by what never arrived. You are defined by the depth of your own presence, the mastery of your own shadow, and the magnetic authority of your fully claimed self. And in that moment, even as the first light spills across the floor, you feel the infinite resonance of a woman who no longer chases, waits, or pleads, but moves through the world entirely on her own terms, luminous, sovereign, and unshakable. And now the culmination begins, where mastery and magnetism merge into a lived reality. The ache that once haunted every quiet moment, that made your chest feel hollow and your pulse desperate, now hums beneath your skin as a steady, resonant current. It is neither absence nor longing. It is presence, distilled and deliberate. You feel it in the weight of your gaze, the curve of your shoulders, the subtle rhythm of your breath. The Shadow Queen watches from within, approving, as you move through space with authority, claiming every inch of it without apology. Desire no longer rules you. It flows from you, sovereign, untethered. Magnetic. And the siren, ethereal and commanding, guides every gesture, every pause, every glance. You recognize the thrill of attention, not as validation but as reflection, a mirror of your own power. The ache that once drew you outward toward another now pulses inward, a reminder of the energy that has always resided within. It teaches rhythm, teaches patience, teaches that allure is not given, borrowed, or earned from anyone else. It is claimed. And in each controlled movement, each deliberate breath, each silence filled with presence, you feel the exquisite satisfaction of embodying your own force, untouchable yet captivating, feral yet refined. Yet even in this mastery, the shadow whispers, flickering at the edges of perception. Old wounds rise in fleeting flashes, the absent touch, the dismissive tone, the moments of unseen vulnerability. They test you not to diminish, but to reveal how far you have come. And now you meet them without flinching, without need. Each pang is observed, integrated, transformed. The ache has become a teacher rather than a tormentor, its rhythm now a guide towards sovereign presence. You move through these echoes deliberately, turning every memory of absence into a rehearsal for power, every reminder of longing into an affirmation of autonomy. The High Priestess emerges fully, her quiet, sacred authority anchoring your transformation. Intuition sharpens, boundaries assert themselves effortlessly, hidden knowledge radiates outward. You feel her in the way your body inhabits space, in the poised control of every movement, in the measured cadence of breath and gaze. The ache hums in harmony with your sovereignty, a pulse beneath each gesture, each glance, each word unsaid but understood. It is no longer a wound to be healed. It is a rhythm to be embodied, a testament to the depth of your magnetism, the clarity of your power, and the full presence of your being. And as the first rays of morning spill across the room, washing over fractured reflections and chiaroscuro shadows, you feel the ache reach its final transmutation. It is no longer longing, no longer absence, no longer pain. It is strength, allure, and mastery in one. The Shadow Queen, the Siren, and the High Priestess converge into a singular, unstoppable presence within you. The world responds not to the ache, but to the authority and magnetism it has forged. The wound that once dictated your patterns has become the pulse of your sovereignty, the hum of your presence, the cadence of your undeniable power. And in this luminous stillness you glimpse the final truth, that the ache, the desire, the longing, all of it, was never meant to bind you to another. It was meant to lead you to yourself, to show you the depth, the mystery, and the magnetic authority you have always carried. You are no longer defined by absence or longing, by unreturned attention, or by the patterns of the past. You are defined by your presence, your sovereignty, your luminous, untouchable embodiment. And in that presence, the ache transforms into a pulse of power, a rhythm of mastery, and the magnetic allure of a woman who walks fully claimed in her own light, untethered and unstoppable. Claim the ache, claim yourself.